Welcome to the afternoon session. So we have one workshop this afternoon, and even if Brian does not like it, from time to time, as a teacher, we are forced to grade work of students. And on the other hand, we would like to let the students as much freedom as possible so that they can produce their own works, make their own projects. But the difficulty is that the projects can be very diverse, and that's a challenge for rating the projects. And Alexandra developed a competency rubric for evaluate these diverse student works during her PhD. And Nicole was is the supervisor of your PhD. She is not here yet because she has to organize the catering again so that we all get something to eat. Oh, there she is. Big applause for Nicole. And so Alexandra will lead the workshop. I guess you also have to rate some work. So I will hand over to you, but you have the microphone.
I have a microphone. Okay, hello and welcome to my workshop. Thank you very much to join it. Yes, as Jens-Peter just said, I will show you part of my PhD project that I developed about myself. I was a vocational teacher for several years, and afterwards I switched to university and working on my PhD now. During my PhD, I concentrated myself on programming with Snap. So I developed kind of a Snap course for novices. And in following the Snap course, students usually develop kind of own projects, creative projects. And the whole thing is that usually I struggle a little with just give a mark for a project. So when a student develops something, it is a creative idea, it's something interesting. And as a teacher, I have to grade it. It's my obligation. So I can do it in another way, but I want to do it fair, and I want to appreciate the idea of my students. So this was a motivation to develop this kind of grading system, assessment system that can be used in different ways. And I hope that I can show different applications of this grid today to you. And I will ask you also to just make just grade 3 projects. So later we can just look probably at the results and discuss a little bit. And I hope also to get feedback from you, because you're sure experts in Snap and block-based programming. So it would be very, very nice if I can get feedback from you and develop my grid further for other teachers. Yes, that's the first question. Why is assessing so challenging? And I think assessing is challenging because usually when we get just standardized tasks, it's easy. You just make a mark, you count points together. But if students do creative work, original work, it's really hard to measure and to be objective, especially when you compare different students together. So it's difficult. And student projects can be very diverse, can be very different in structure and style. So actually you can compare each progress together. You have to measure each project on itself. At the same time, there are different solutions possible in each project to the task that I give. And an important aspect also for me, novices projects may contain errors, but they also can show progress. So by assessing a project, I can show a student that I will help him if I give him a fair feedback on his progress. And that's just a start. We go in a workshop. The test projects, they are on a collection on the Snap site, and this is a short link. You have to put it in if you have your laptops, probably. You have to put it, and I also show you these 3 projects. So we worked together today on these 3 projects. The one is e-card challenge, rainbow ball, and avocado gift. The projects are I don't know from whom the projects are. These are not projects from my students. I just searched on Snap site for projects that look like students' projects, and I just and they look like projects that novices can program after some period of time. If they just learn a little bit of Snap, they have probably creative ideas. So I found this projects, and I will show them to you. But at first, I think it's better if you go on the site, go on this page.
It's not O, not a 0. Yes.
Yeah, it's an O. Okay.
It's an O.
It's an O. 4MO1SDA. Okay. I would present the projects for you, for everyone, and then I can just go to the person who, to people who have problems and help probably with accessing, because I also have the projects on my laptop and I can share it to you per USB, for example. It's also possible.
Yes, please. I'm making them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So these are 3 projects where I just thought, okay, it's probably kind of a student project. Part of my students did kind of this projects on this way when they just had fun, or just a smaller project during 1 or 2 lessons, for example. And this one is kind of a small game here. With a little bit of animation on this project, and you're asked here to answer a very, very difficult question. Now the Grim Reaper comes and yeah, it's a little bit crazy. But I think it's kind of a student project because it's quite funny. And yes, and the question is how many colors are in the rainbow if I add another to it? A fun project, yes. Okay, and I don't know. Actually, I answer this question usually right because I'm a teacher, but I can also try to answer with a false. I never tried it actually, so I just try it now. Yes, yes.
Oh.
Bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. So, okay, that's all. Okay, quite funny. So that's the one. Then I think we've got rainbow ball, and kind of playing with animation and colors in Snap. So I think it also kind of a novices project at the beginning where you try some functions here, a loop, for example. So actually here happens nothing special. There is a ball and just it changes its colors and go to rainbow. Well, you see, quite easy. One object. And the last one, I think it's also funny. And just because it's that funny, I think it's not, so it's an avocado and it's a GIF, and actually it is very sweet. So it's just avocado baby, kind of. Yes, there are some objects here, so it's also a small, nice animation project. And I think you also, all of you can just open this project at the moment. Okay, so now I have a very easy task for you. You saw the projects, you see the projects also on your laptops. I'll give you a first paper. Yeah, okay, two sheets of papers, and both of them have a number. And it would be better if I get them to. So the one person answers gives the answer on the same paper with the same number. So the 1 and the 1, for example. And what we first do, we just grade these projects. So you just look at it and just make a grade. What do you think? What is a project? I just thought it is probably easier if we grade it in kind of letters A to F. A, B, C, D, E, F. From A is excellent and F is fail. I think there are different ways to grade it. So there is A plus, and so on. But we just make A to F. I think it is the best way. So it's when you think it's a perfect project, it's just an A. And when you think, okay, no, it's fail, completely fail, it's an F. For 3 projects. And the second part, I would ask you just wait a little until we talk about the grid. But I give you all sheets together.
Yeah.
Okay?
So ignore the big sheet for the moment.
Yeah.
Yes. And do not discuss your grading with the neighbor.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Just look at the project, say, okay, I think this agency, whatever. Yeah, just the feeling, do not discuss it, do not show it to a neighbor. So that's important to see the difference.
So you have enough time later for grading with competency grid. Yes, and so basically in normal classroom, you don't grade light with an intuition. You usually also have kind of criteria and context, sure. But still, it is not that easy to grade and not easy to make your criteria on yourself. That was also my challenge, my problem. What are the criteria? And so the one possible solution for this is kind of this competency rubric, so grade. So it's kind of a table with different criteria, with different levels. And the idea is that creative projects require multi-phased feedback, so it should be transparent, criterion-guided, and differentiated. So it's also very important to give to a creative project an individual feedback to each student. It also gives you a comprehensive overview over current student performance, so you get much more insight into student work if in compare to just normal grading. And also it supports comparability across projects and gives you an objective framework. And the competence rubric we created consists of 17 categories and has 4 competency levels and has also some code examples for teachers who need a little bit support. This also is a short URL to the competency rubric where you can just download it and have on your computer. There's also a QR code, so you can find it in both ways. And I will also show you immediately the competency grid. I think it would be good if you just open it and download it for you, so you have it on your computer. I can use it also later. The sheet you've got doesn't have code examples and descriptions, it's just only for grading, but the digital file has all these things, has descriptions, levels, and code examples, so it is easier to apply this grid. If it was correct, or probably you can also give some more ideas how we can make it better and more yes, how we can make it better. At the end, these 2 special categories, project structure and creativity. And you've got a sheet here. I would ask you just try to apply it and to get your own impression of this competency grid, because actually I didn't find anything else to block-based programming languages. The idea of competency grid is not a novum, but there is nothing else about block-based programming. And probably it would be helpful to all teachers who's teaching with block-based programming languages if they want to make kinds of a grading. So these are the categories 17, and here you just put a point for, so for example, ECAR challenge for object, I don't know, probably you would give 2 points using the description of the grid. If you have any question, don't hesitate to ask. I will go to you, but I think it's really clear how to apply it. But if you have some questions, I come.
You are not ready yet. Anyway, we would like to open the discussion. You can continue various projects. You're not done yet, but we now would like to open it for the first round of discussion. So, what are your feelings about the grid? Okay, so what are your first remarks, first impression? So Brian, would you like to start?
I'm not sure I agree with the categories that you chose to grade on in all cases. I mean, some of them seem pretty general to me, like use of lists, build your own block. Those were okay. But sometimes you're grading on things that I didn't understand, like graphical effects. What constitutes a 1 or a 2 or a 3? I had trouble with. Object actions, I had trouble understanding that one. So there were a couple that I found hard to understand. But also, it seems as if the idea behind this rubric is that the ideal project has one of everything. You know, it has loops and it has sub-procedures and it has object-oriented programming and, you know, and I don't think that's realistic. I think, for example, if you're doing something functionally, you're going to score 0 on a bunch of these, you know, because you're not going to have any loops, for example. Yeah, so I had a lot of trouble with the rubric.
Okay. So,
Okay. Okay, so sure, there is no perfect project, but it's kind of a framework for a student to know what I'm probably waiting for in my lesson. And actually, I don't have to make a grade from this. I just can leave it kind of a score a student reach and say, look, I'll show it later in examples and results. Look, we learned probably variables and loops and something else and blocks, and the student reach in loops 3, score 3, and in variables only 0, and I can show it to him. So that's your problem. So it's also a possibility to make a discussion with the student more. To discuss with a student only about his project, not very common. Okay, I just wait. I just want a perfect project from you. That's that. So that's one of the points. So you can differentiate how you assess.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 general remarks. First of all, it's not suitable for all projects. So the base is really so typical student projects in school for beginners, I guess. The second thing is that every teacher, of course, is allowed to adopt it and to just select some of these categories and whatever they do. It's more an attempt to give a general framework, and Alexandra will show you some results that it really works. Although we have this nettle box that you told us, yeah, that you are right in many of these points. But you will see later in the results that it still works. And of course, you are allowed to just choose some of the categories. Jens also just told you, oh, it's a hard work. It's a lot to do.
But I'm finished.
Yeah, you are finished. Congratulations. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And so maybe less categories are also enough for you, but that's everybody decide by himself. So more remarks. You were first.
Alexandra, just have a question. Maybe you mentioned that before. What was the task given to the students?
So these projects are not student projects. These projects are from SNAP collection.
Okay, but
because I couldn't take the students' project for a test. Yes, but for example, projects I did were actually 3 projects. We did a SNAP programming course together for some hours, and they learned some basics of programming. And afterwards, I just said, okay, you have 4 hours for lessons, and during these 4 lessons, you can make your own project what you want. And they create it on themselves. But these projects are not the projects.
The background of my question was that I find it kind of hard if I'm told that I can do something which is close to my heart, to my express an idea, is for me something entirely different than if I'm asked to apply as many computing features I learned. So that would be very different, because for one project,
yes, sure.
And this is why I find it difficult to fill the criteria.
So no, usually you would
for let's say voluntary projects at all.
Okay, no, usually you would say also, for example, I also had lessons where I just said, okay, at the end, you create a project, and in this project, you should show what you learned. So they probably find a common idea or something actual, something current from use, and they have, it's kind of a test project except of a real test, except writing of a test. So it is also a possibility how you apply it, or you can just give it and say, here is the framework for you. You just can look what you learned and what you didn't learn. Like you said, self-control also. So there are both possibilities. Sure, if I just say make a creative project and then I come and say, hey, I have a framework and I grade you, that's not fair. Yeah. And that was not the way I did it. Yeah. And I think no teacher does this in this way. And you say you make a creative project and you give it as a framework to self-control, or you make kind of a test with students and you say, here, this is how I want you to work, and these are things we learned, and show that you can apply all these things.
Sorry, so one suggestion to address some of these issues, have you thought of allowing the teachers to give weight to different categories?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe you look at one project and you find that it hasn't used any loops, but it's beautiful. So you might want to give more weight to some of these categories, depending on the type of project.
Mm-hmm.
So that some things, give more points than others.
Let me answer that for sure. So this is the first version for the grid we also will publish. The idea is that we would provide an Excel sheet like this, where you can choose your categories you would like to have, where you just add the points that is summed up automatically. And for sure, we can use there also a weight, which is usually 1, but if you would like to do it in another fashion, you're free to do that. For sure. Okay. Jens' person.
Let me start by saying I was surprised how well I like this, because at first I thought, it's about grading projects. Then I looked at the projects and I found, well, they're not really interesting to me. Like I was going through the opposite. They hardly use reporters. There's like what they do is hardly interesting to me. And so as I was just giving the grades kind of by my guts, I was giving the grades basically on, I was going through looking for, does anybody use custom blocks? Do I understand these custom blocks? Why do they use with this rubric, I spent some time going through kind of your examples. And I thought, well, yeah, it's bureaucracy. I need to find a place where I can actually go through this long list and do it. And I had difficulties kind of grading the first project because I needed to go through but the second one was easier and the third one was kind of going just like this. And I was running into the issue that Bernard ran into, is that, wait, one project doesn't have many of the features of the other, but there's this thing that it does really well. So I'd like to compensate and say, the absence of this, and then maybe just having the numbers 0 to 3 would be a little too less. So I thought, well, how do I deal with this? And I filled it out, I guess, how you meant it to fill out. But then it occurred to me that, Jens, this is exactly for teachers who are like you. Who don't really like these projects because they can do it better themselves, who are thrown into this class. This isn't computer science. This is people being creative and doing stuff. So you need to have something that helps you along, so at least you kind of are fair to the kids and aren't just doing what you like yourself, and you're giving all the rewards to your favorite and or your hatred to the one who doesn't do. And I actually have to say, when I then compared my notes with Alf, and he had kind of the similar kind of, I was a little bit more stern, I think, but the ranking turned out to be pretty much exactly the same, but not exactly the same. I thought this is actually cool. So my message is, I guess you guys know something about pedagogy that I don't, but that I learned today, that is actually great. That if you have a complex problem, like assess something, you should do what we computer scientists do. You break it down into, matrix, into some dimensions. And that helps me a lot. And I would assume that any teacher who's in a real situation will be able not to slavishly follow this, but to use this as a guideline, and then to go through and say, but overall, this is so wonderfully creative, or there's a sense of humor there that's not graded in here that I just think is great. Or, well, even though this only has, one script, but wow, it's using a compositional function, which nobody else does. So wow, this is great. So there's always, I think, if we see grading as something that's not an excuse to give a bad grade, but an excuse to find something that you can like about a project. And that helped me, because I didn't like these projects, but this helped me like them.
Okay, thank you, Jens.
Just was you first, and we will go this way. No, only one point. So, what's the average time? We ask a lot of people to use this rubric to validate that, and the average time they use, not the first time for sure. You've seen that you are getting faster. Alex, what was it?
About 8 to 9 minutes per project.
Yeah.
So it is very comparable to correcting a normal test in maths, for example. So you need for a whole classroom about 200 to 300 minutes, depending on the grade. So from 8 grade or 11 grade, it's different, but it's sure the time you usually take for test for assessing a normal test in a classroom.
And the project were a little bit more complicated also sometimes.
Yes.
So 8 minutes is good.
Surprised by the outcome, because I gave the highest grades to project that I did not. The first thing.
Yes, that's also the trick.
No, actually, it's just
Yeah.
We will see that in the results.
Yeah, we'll have to see how we all scored these things. But there were a couple of, here's a couple of specific suggestions for improvement for the form. If you're going to give teachers a form like this, then at the bottom of the form, there has to be a box for other comments. Because, I mean, teachers know they should give comments to students, but I find that this kind of a form pushes me in the direction of saying, okay, I got an answer here, I'm done, next project. And not looking at the particular things like the kid who thinks that he can repeat something 37 and a half times. And you're like, what? I need to talk to this kid. Another thing that maybe should be a category in here is signaling versus dead reckoning in the time dimension. So the typical Scratch beginner bad style is, say such and such, wait 5.3 seconds because that's how it comes out exactly right on my computer, and then say the next thing. And in the intervening time, some other sprite is doing something else. And instead, those things should be broadcasts back and forth. So there's a category for object actions, but that's pretty vague, I think.
Yeah.
If I were making this form, there would be a category called message passing,
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
which is a very specific thing you can learn that I think people in our world of visual programming often don't get. So there's some specific things like that. But also, I'm eager to hear how everybody graded everything.
Thank you. Probably if also some of you has kind of such ideas how we can call it better, what is the better term, or another categories that are missing, probably you can write it on the back side of a sheet as idea. So we take it with us. I think it would be also very good.
I didn't do it because I couldn't look up the projects on my iPhone. That was difficult. But I've used these rubrics a lot, and sometimes they're totally terrible. For example, when I have to grade presentations given by students, sometimes they give me a rubric like this with 20 aspects. I have to grade 0 till 4, but I want to listen to the presentation, the way I try to do it myself is to, I'm a teacher, I have students, and in Holland we have this, we grade between 1 and 10, and 1 is bad and 10 is perfect. And we have the grade of 6, which is called sufficient. And I try to specify what is sufficient. And on top of sufficient, you can gain a lot of bonus points. And that may help Brian, because then you can score, beyond the maximum score. And some people can get at the maximum score in very different ways. So without loops, you can have the maximum score because it was very well organized, original, etc. So
Like compensates to those.
yeah, that's a compensation method, and it's especially important, I think, to get all kids above sufficient. I think it's more important than discriminate between perfect or almost perfect. So and this illusion of 51 points going from 1 till 6 linearly, it's an illusion of safety. And it makes also children a little bit stressed sometimes. They think, oh no. Anyhow, my 2 cents.
So that's very easy to solve. Yeah? You can say, okay, not 51 is perfect, but 45. Everything from 45 is perfect. That's quite easy, and yeah, you feel free to do that. But you can think about that again if you have seen the results from these 10 projects. But you're right with that. You can definitely do that. We had some more.
Yes, that was. I think
Was it-
you was the.
You got first. I'm sorry, Richard.
Just short comment. I think it's very good to have categories to get a feedback. Maybe one can write a scanner who checks if these categories, so you don't have to fill it out. What I miss here is that if you play with Scratch and you see it in the programs, it's a development process. Yeah, so learning is a development process. So the categories are quite static, but actually, if you're using a lot of code again and again, and you see it in this eCard challenge project, for example, then you are using blocks, yeah? But they didn't use the blocks for this costume change and so on, so use it for something else. So actually, if a teacher is using these categories, he will miss the point to see that he should explain the kids that actually, if you're using again procedures and blocks again and again, you shouldn't have in mind to use and build your own blocks. And I think this with the categories, that is something that is missing. And maybe if you write a scanner on the code, then actually that is interesting. How did the kids evolve over time in the development in Scratch? Yeah. Or in Snap. And this is something maybe that for further research works would be interesting if you can do this dynamically, yeah, and not thinking in categories, but that you see how far have you been on your way to be a perfect Snap developer as a feedback for the teacher and to improve what he should repeat and so on. Thank you.
Usually you have two types of assessment in school. You have a formative assessment and summative assessment. And formative assessment, what you're talking about, is kind of a process. And I think this kind of a grid can be used in process. So you use it more times and you go through it again and again with your students. But actually it's kind of for a summative assessment at the end. So I think for process, you need something else probably, and you talk with your student, you go with him the way to learn. And at the end, you just say, okay, we learned something, and now I would like to give you a grade, or I have to give you a grade.
Yeah, have to is a better one.
So usually it is I have to. So, and I would like to give you a fair grade. So I think it's kind of the summative assessment. But sure, the process is very important too. Probably the most important thing is the process.
Creating AI tool on this.
Yes.
Getting out.
So maybe one more statement from Richard, and then you can probably show the results first, because we have a lot of detailed things now. Of course, you can do such a rubric more complicated. But to see what this rubric really can do, you should really show the results first. But first, one statement from you two, then show the results. We can discuss.
So the first question is, can some of this be automated? I use the project summary to make it easier for me to work through and see the evidence for what you were looking for. Yeah. I understand it was made for that purpose. I only discovered this morning, so that was cool. And maybe more automation would help me to just be quicker, to reduce the time spent. The second thing was, what about what I call the communication with other people? Things like the comments, descriptions, variable names, block names, statement of goal, which I would have loved to have seen at the beginning somewhere, don't know where. They're not program things, I know, but they're important in the strict sense of execution, but they are, to me, really important. That's just me.
We just miss it.
No, that's okay, yeah. And the third thing, Sorry?
Untitled 3, Untitled 4.
Well, and then the third thing is connected a bit with the statement of goal. How did I make sense of success of the project to achieve the goal? Well, I didn't know the goal, so I didn't know. And then there is a small reference to it in the creativity section. I'm not sure that's exactly the right place to put it. So that's it. I wrote this down.
Thank you very much. Yes, your first point is actually very important, and we missed it. So thank you very much. You wrote it perfect.
Okay. I missed some categories like on comments on maybe his creativity, but maybe I have more about aesthetics, about different feelings, and then maybe the list will be very long. But for me, the important thing is I only need a total score or a number to grade or letter. Maybe in the end of the semester I don't need this in each project. And then for me, for the project, it's more important the category. The sum is not important here. Maybe it's to see the categories, because maybe if in a project you don't need graphical effects, then they're not graphical effects, but it's not a problem. And then I don't only grade when I see that graphical effects will improve that project to the hey, you have graphical effects. And then also I think that it was important a tool like a continuous rubric. Because then when you have 3 or 4 open projects, maybe a student never use graphical effects, and maybe then, hey, there are graphical effects. But if you have a student that uses the graphical effects in one project and it's nice, it's not a problem that he doesn't use this in other projects. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe show the results first, and then we continue.
Yes. So we did kind of a small study with 10 projects, and some teachers of computer science and students of computer science that were on their way to become a teacher. Also people, they were familiar with Snap or block-based programming languages. So they had a little bit of experience or more experience. And we asked them to do actually the same thing as you did, with a little bit more background information, not that fast as in workshop now. So they had a little bit more background for the whole thing. And this is the comparison of the results. So this one on this side is without the grid, without the rubric, and on this side is using the grid. And we've got here 9 participants. So you can see actually here the dispersion on different, these are the projects. So 1 to 10 projects, and the grades are 1 to 6. So 1 is A and 6 is F. So it's if you've got 1, so it's very excellent, it's good, it's excellent, and here 6 is actually fail. But there is no project that got 6 or 5. Most of them without the grid got actually very good grades or good grades. And we got a lot of dispersion on every project. That was very interesting because all of the people were familiar with Snap, and all of the people actually learned with Snap and taught with Snap. But the dispersion on each so for example, for the project 6, for student number 6, it would be 3.5 grades difference. So one teacher would say, oh, you're perfect, and another say, almost fail. And similar, also project 4 or project 2. And here at the end, we think that the problem is that the scale, yes, the scale is at the end, so there is no possibility. So we think that the dispersion goes on here.
Just everybody says A because it looks.
Yes, but there is no more grade, so just an A because the project 10 was good. But if we had here, for example, 10, probably we got also the same dispersion, because actually it goes like that. And here was the comparison with the grid. And here we get, I think here kind of 10 points different at maximum. So it's kind of one grade, 10 points. So it's about 51 points and 51 is the best. So 10 points and is kind of one grade. So we've got a one grade dispersion. We've got here also on this, I think this project, also big dispersion because of, I think, a little bit technical problems with projects, because here I talked also to people and asked why. They said here, for example, they didn't find some blocks because there were own blocks of children. They didn't find them, so the project didn't get any points at that point. And here, I think the same thing. So here were some ideas missed, or no, here were some ideas rated as too good. So it's actually not the right thing, not right application of the grid. But the most amount of projects and the average of project doesn't get this big dispersion in comparison to grading without. And yes. This is also, should I show this? Yes, this is also an average, just a comparison of average. So we this is open grading, so without a grid, and this is an average with grading. So all grades count together, an average of them. And we see, actually, we don't know why, but that's the fact. We see that grading without a grid is better than grading with a grid of that project. But we didn't study the reason, so we have just, you probably have.
I think the problem is with the formula you use. It's practically impossible to get maximum points.
Okay.
So we had used a much simpler grid with only 5 categories, but we had to give, I think, a bit of 80%. So 80% of the possible was 100.
Yeah.
So you have, I say, it's not possible to pick every checkbox of the 70 checkboxes. If you get 10,
yes,
then this should be an A. So this is a problem. When you have now four of 10 people have failed.
yes.
And the other, that's not, they don't have failed. Maybe they have gotten something wrong, but I don't think it's fine. Everyone was a part of the project, it was running.
Yes.
Just one point for that. We also thought that you're right with this offset. We should definitely do that. That's for sure. But this failed project, what we have seen is these projects that are not one of these we have shown you, they are failed. They are crap, completely crap. Yeah. That was a few blocks, not even connected to a script. That are just a few blocks on the stage, on the scripting area. So they are failed. That's it. But the more interesting thing is that the guys, you don't use the rubric. Say, okay, it's enough. In what word is this enough? It's no way. So. And what Alexandra, it's coming here, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's also very interesting. This is a result of one person. So this is one teacher, and he grades with an average. So it's in comparison to the average, and the comparison to the average without a grid and with a grid. And the dot is the person, and he's grading. And what you see here is that this person graded with a big dispersion without a grid, and he graded really quite good to the average. So I think it's also very interesting for teachers, for typical using in school. So you can say, yes, I'm not far away from average, so I'm probably a little bit more fair to my students. I'm more comparable to my colleagues, probably. Yes.
I have another we tested in our course. We had much simpler grid, but we gave it to the pupils too. And then each group presented their project, and each person graded. In my grades got 1/3, and the course couldn't grade their own project, of course, but the course got 2/3. And I had just one course that didn't work out, but most of the times the pupils were a little bit stronger, a little bit sharper than my grades. But in this way, we could participate and we could tailor by what are the problems. So it initiated discussion in the classroom. And for me, it was easier got it done during the lesson instead of sitting at home and 2 or 3 hours and grading those projects.
Yes, this is probably a small answer to that here. What I did is kind of a comparison.
Let me just say one more thing. I can continue with that because that's a graph you did not show. If you just order the project by ranking, I say, okay, that's the best, second, and so on and so forth. It is very different between all the people that have rated that. But with using the grid, at least the order is almost the same. I think there was one that had a different order from these 10 or 12 graders. So using this grid, all the graders come to the same conclusion regarding to the order of quality, which is absolutely not the case if you do that just without. So sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's fine. There's also another possibility. I personally appreciate this possibility a lot because of my motivation of assessing to give my students more feedback and corrective feedback during the lessons. So you can also use such metrics as comparing projects or taking more projects from one person and look deeply into categories and just look, for example, as idea for evaluating of progress. So first progress, first project, second project, and the project at the end, how students develop, or you can compare different projects. And also probably as an aspect for a teacher, correcting yourself, just looking for your students and looking where most of the students have problems, because if you just make a grade, all of students have 2 and 3 and 1, you don't know what they are missing. And if you see all projects together in these categories, and sometimes some categories are missing by all of the students, it is probably, and you teach this aspect, for example, this is probably also feedback to you. So you can see, oh, I was not good. I didn't explain it very well. My students didn't understand that. So it is also a possibility how you can apply it. So it's kind of the 2 directions of using it. Yes, I think I don't have any graphics anymore. I also had here kind of a feedback discussion slide. So some points you just mentioned, so which categories should be added, and also which aspects are covered. And
so maybe we have 5 minutes left with these. Yeah. So with this information, with these results, maybe there are some more questions or comments or whatever.
Yeah, I have another question. Alex, what about the soft skills, like assessment during the process of coding? Like if it's a voluntary project and I start with an idea and then I realize, oh, wow, this is hard, I just change and do something more simple, versus I start to talk to my neighbor or I start to do a research, like the way the students handle problems they meet during their project creation. Is that, like, I would find that very interesting to look at. Did you consider that, or by intent not?
The grid doesn't cover this information. It's clear. Usually it depends also. I think it's very practical question. So it depends in which school you are, in which class, because sometimes it's also part of the assessing. and you have to look, and sometimes it is just your own opinion to give your student a feedback, but mostly it shouldn't be part of this assessment grid. You know,
Just the hard skills.
yes, that's usually. Sometimes you have schools where you have both. You can also grade kind of soft skills, so it's kind of Projektnote. There's kind of this, but usually in normal lessons, you just talk with your students and give them feedback, and you don't. Yes, kind of. Yes, you're kind of a tutor. But I think each teacher can also give some more categories in this direction if he needs this, because I think computer science or programming science has also a lot of kind of methodical skills that are not in this grid at the moment. So how you program or how you work on computer science, this category also can be added, sure.
Yeah, in this setting, it makes obviously no sense, because we had just the projects and not the history, how
Yes.
they were built. And our aim was to develop a grid to grade projects so that everybody can grade it and has not have to see what happened in the class or whatever, so that somebody can fairly grade projects from what they get, not how it was built. So it was not possible in this setting for sure. But if you use it in practice, you can add whatever you like. So
I know I'm talking too much.
No.
So just so you know, I am very skeptical about pretty much all education research. I can give you my rant about that later on, but it seems to me that what you're proving is that if you ask only trivial questions, you get trivial answers. Which is to say, if you ask a teacher, just look at, how many loops does this program have? Then yeah, all the teachers will count the same number of loops. Duh. That doesn't, the replicability of a score, which is what your graphs are about, doesn't answer the question of whether the score is actually measuring anything I want to measure. So like, for example, take the avocado project. As computer programming, it was practically non-existent. But it was so cute. It had great art in it, and I would give it a high grade because it does what a project is supposed to do, namely express something that's inside the person who's making the program. I couldn't care less how many loops my students use or how many procedures they write or how many whatever. Those things are, and furthermore, the important point is that assessment is not separate from pedagogy. So everybody's been saying, in order to be fair, you have to show the kids this rubric before they start work. Well, that's not value neutral. If you show the kids this rubric, you're saying, hey, kids, this is what I value in a good program. Whether you mean to be saying that or not, that's what you are saying. And I don't want to tell kids that what's important about their program is how many loops are in it. So,
Should I answer?
So I personally would never show the grid to the students before, but that everybody has to decide how he would like to handle that. Anyway, I get some of your points, but you should also consider that what we have also looked at certainly is that the overall tendency of the quality of the projects is nearly the same if you do it by heart, if many people do it just by heart, have a look. Only the disappearance is much bigger, but the tendency is nearly the same. So also with this rubric, we are measuring by whatever way ever, maybe counting loops, I don't care. So we are measuring, obviously, also the quality of the project, because we got the same trend than if you just rate it by what reasons ever. So it's only, the deviation is much smaller. But I get some of your points that, of course, we are measuring counting loops. But the result says, okay, it's a good way to count loops to get a fair grade. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess.
Actually, we are.
Are there more questions? We don't want to stop if there are more questions. But it's time. It's coffee time.
It's very important.
So.
If you have more questions, you can also write me an email. And also, I would take your ideas and your rating. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm a teacher.
So, thank you very much.
I can read
We are done.
handwriting.